Okay, so here we go, starting with problem number 14 on practice exam 1. They want us to solve this. So this is a compound inequality. It's got 3 parts. And the main thing that we need to focus on is it's got that denominator. So what do we always do when we have a fraction, a denominator, and we're trying to solve? We multiply through all the terms, 6 over 1, by that denominator. And right here it cancels. So we multiply through by that. What? 6 times 14? 84. This is 7x plus 42. And this is 126. Okay, now we're trying to get x alone. So we're focused right in here, and x is saying, I want to be alone here in the middle. So get rid of the 42. Whatever we do to one part, we do to all 3 parts. And so that gives us, this cancels, 7x. And that's, 84. And that's 42. Okay. Last step to get x alone. Divide through by 7. So that gives us, cancels here, x. Oops, forgot the equals bar there. That's 6, and that's 12. So then the answer is 6, 12. You put an interval. Remember, the bar goes with the bracket, no bar, no bracket. Remember how that works? If there's an equals bar, less than or equal, a bar makes a bracket, B with B. Bar leads to bracket. And over here, no bar, no bracket. It's a parenthesis instead, right? Because the bracket means you're equals. You're straight on that number, right? It's greater than or equal to 6, whereas it's less than 12. It's around 12. It's close to 12, but it's not equal to 12. It's not right on 12. It's less than 12. It can be 11.99999, but not 12 right in the money. So you're around 12, the rounded parenthesis, not a bracket, not straight on the 12. So if we go back to 14, that answer's not there. None of the above on that one, because we got 6 to 12 and it's not there. All right, on with 15 we go. So number 15, that's a half. X minus 2 greater than a fourth. 7x minus 2. All right, so what's our first step to solve this thing? We've always got to think about denominators. Multiply through by the common denominator. What's the common denominator? 4. Multiply both sides by 4. 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 4 cancels 4. So we end up with 2 parentheses x minus 2, and here, nothing, 7x minus 2. Just distribute. 2x minus 4. Okay, x is saying, I want to be alone. Here's the wall. I want to be alone, so subtract 2x. I usually get rid of the lower one when I have x's on both sides. So that gives me minus 4 there. This is 5x minus 2. X still wants to be alone, so add 2 to both sides. That cancels out there. And this is minus 2. This is 5x. Last step to get x alone. Divide by 5. There it is. Now, it's usually helpful to turn this statement around. So I'm going to flip the whole thing. I don't like x on the right side. It's kind of hard to read when x is on the right side. So flip the entire thing around. So put the x over here, flip the symbol also, and the negative 2/5 on the other side. That's just an easier way to read it. That's saying the same thing. See how the x here was on the narrow side of the symbol? Now the x is still on the narrow side of the symbol. It's still saying the same thing. X is less than negative 2/5. Now, how do you write that as an interval? Well, if you put it on a number line, you don't have to, but it might help. Minus 2/5. X is less than. X is this way, right? X is less than negative 2/5. So it's to the left of negative 2/5. That's where the lesser things go. So it's from negative infinity to negative 2/5. Parenthesis, right? Because there's no bracket, because there's no bar. It's not equals. It's a parenthesis on both, right? Because brackets on bars lead to brackets. If it's greater than or equal, then that would be a bracket, and that would lead to a bar. We have no brackets, no bars, then no brackets. Parentheses. It's all the numbers less than negative 2/5, like that. So we go back. So less than negative 2/5. So it's that one with the negative 2/5, option A. There we go, negative infinity to negative 2/5. Okay, number 16. Absolute value 4x minus 1 minus 9 less than minus 5. So how do you do absolute value? Well, got to have a game plan. So when you have absolute value less than, what do? Step 1, get the absolute value alone. So that means add the 9 to both sides. Cancels out. Absolute value 4x minus 1 less than 4. So we add 9 to both sides. So there's step 1. Step 2. Remove absolute values and put negative number inside positive number. So I take that 4 and I go over here and I go negative 4, put the less than, and the positive 4. So there's that step. So it's good to put this on your 3x5 card for the exam. Now step 3, solve for x, and the answer will be of the form negative number. Well, it'll be negative number, positive number, usually like that. So let's add 1. Boom. So we get 4x, this is 5, this is negative 3. And then divide through by 4. Boom. -5/4, negative 3/4. Okay. Now, and then how do we say that answer? Interval from negative 3/4 to 5/4. It's all the numbers from negative 3/4 to 5/4. That whole entire interval. So if we go back to the options, negative 3/4 to 5/4. There it is, option D. There it is. All right, let's try number 17 now. 17 is going to be absolute value the other way. Absolute value of b minus 3 minus 5 greater than 8. So, again, now it's going to be absolute value greater. How do you do absolute value greater? Step 1, same. Get absolute values alone. So to get them alone, you would add 5 to both sides. So we get absolute value b minus 3 greater than 13. So there was that step. Step 2, it's the removal step. Remove the absolute values. And you do it this way. You go inside less than the negative number or inside greater than the positive number. You break it into two separate statements. Let's do that. So you put the minus 13 over here, or you go to this way and you go inside less than minus 13, put it right there. Or inside greater than positive 13, like right there. Okay, so now we need to solve for B on both. So add 3 to both, and add 3 to both. And so what do we get? B less than negative 10, or B greater than 16. And then how do we give our final answer? The final answer is of the form negative infinity number united with number to infinity. So we say negative infinity to negative 10 united with 16 to infinity. Whoops, it's supposed to be infinity. So, so the absolute value greater problems always end up having the infinities. They always end up having, notice, two parentheses. They end up having two set of parentheses and infinities on the ends. Whereas the absolute value less just ends up being one set of parentheses, no infinities on that. So if we go back to find that answer, you'll see that it's answer A when you go back. All right, let's go forward to number 18. So number 18, 5 square root of 245 minus 2 square root of 45 plus 7 square root of 80. Okay, so this one we just got to break everything down. So just use your calculator. 5 times what? 49, I think. And then that's 7 times 7. This one is 5 times 9, 3 times 3. This is 8 times 10, 2 times 4, 2 times 2, 2 times 5. So 5, 7, 7. So remember, you just take all the little primes, the numbers that couldn't break down anymore. Those are the pieces, the building blocks of the numbers. So we have 5 square root of 577 for that one, minus 2 square root of 533 for that one, plus 7 square root of 5. I'll put that 5 first, and then 4 2's. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 2's and a 5. Okay, and now what number's in the hook here and here? Nothing. There's no number in the hook. Those, this 5 and 2 and 7, they're just numbers, big numbers in the front of the square roots. They're not numbers in the hook. So there's nothing in the hook, which really means it's an understood 2 in the hook, which means it's a 2-for-1 deal. 2 7's in, sends 1 7 out, they're gone. So 5 times 7, 35, root 5 minus. 2 3's in, sends a 3 out, 3 times 2, 6, with a 5 left in. 2 2's in, sends a 2 out, 2 2's in, sends another 2 out. 7 times 2 times 2, use your calculator, 28, and a 5 left in. So now all the simplifying is over. Now we can combine like terms. See how they're all roots of 5? They're all like terms, like roots. So we can just take our calculator. 35 roots of 5, take away 6 roots of 5, add 28. Just on your calculator, go 35 minus 6 plus 28 is 57 roots of 5, I think, right? 22. Yeah, 57 roots of 5. When we go back to look for that one, we're going to find something disturbing, aren't we? So it's not here. It's none of these. So that happens. So the answer is E. None of these. 57 root of 5. Okay, on to 19 we go. 10 square root 11 multiplied by 2 root 66. Okay. How should we do this? Well, let's break it down. What's in that 66? 6 times 11, 2 times 3, Well, actually, let's don't do that. Let's well, yeah, actually that'd be fine. Sorry, I changed my mind. So 6 times 11, and that's 2 times 3. So what we get is 10 root 11 times 2 root of 2, 3, 11, right? 2, 3, 11, all the little numbers that wouldn't break down. Okay, and so when you multiply these together, 10 times, remember how this works, outsiders multiply outsiders, and insiders multiply insiders. So 10 times 2 is 20. And then inside, just put it all in there together. So we've got, an 11, a 2, a 3, and 11. There it all is together in one big root. Now the last thing, remember this square root, it's a 2 for 1 deal. So we've got 2 11s inside, sends 1 11 outside, and they multiply out there. 220. What's left inside? 2 times 3, 6. 220 root of 6. So that's answer C on the multiple choice. Number 20. Root of 10 plus 3 times root of 10 minus 3. All right, how's it work? So we're going to take this square root of 10 and we're going to go to both, right? Because it's first to, 2 terms added and 2 terms subtracted. They multiply. First, it's 4 multiplications, right? First to both, second to both. So root 10, root 10. Do you remember that's plain 10? Remember when you have root 10, it just is plain 10. Why? Because 2 10s inside, remember square roots are a 2 for 1 deal. 2 10s inside leads to 1 10 outside. So minus 3 root 10. He's done. He went to both. And now this guy's going to go to both. Plus 3 root 10 minus 9. These cancel. 10 minus 9, 1. The answer is 1, which is option D on the multiple choice. Let's try 21. It'll be very similar. So 21, 8 root 2, 8 root 2 minus 6 quantity squared. Well, you know that means 8 root 2 minus 6 times 8 root 2 minus 6. You got to write 2 of them, and you got to FOIL it out. So I got to take this guy's got to go to both, right? Boom and boom. Now remember, what's the rule when you're multiplying these square roots? Outside numbers times outside numbers, inside numbers times inside numbers. So 8 times 8, 64. And root 2 is root 4. See, the 8's multiplied on the outside, the 2's on the inside. Then 8 root 2 times 6 is 48 root 2. He's done. He went to both. Now the minus 6 is going to go to both. Minus 48 root 2 plus 36. 6 times 6, right? Minus 6 times minus 6 is plus 36. Okay, now what? Well, the square root of 4 is just 2, isn't it? So that's going to be 128. Minus 48 root 2 and minus 48 root 2 add together to be 96 root 2, right? If you lose 48 bucks and lose 48 bucks, you lost 96 bucks. Plus 36. And finally, this 36 and this 128 can combine. Let me see, what is that? 164 minus 96 root 2. 164 minus 96 root 2. Option B on that one. Okay. 22. Minus 5 over root 12. Okay. So first thing, don't multiply top and bottom by root 12 right now. First, simplify. This is 4 times 3, 2 times 2. So this becomes minus 5 over root of 223, right? 223. And then remember what square roots do? They're a 2 for 1 deal, so 2 2's inside puts 1, 2 outside, and they're gone. So we get minus 5 over 2 root 3. Now, we can't leave a square root in the bottom. So we multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3. What do we get? Just go straight on the top. You get minus 5 root 3. On the bottom you get 2. And what's root 3 root 3? Plane 3, right? Remember, root 3 is plane 3 because 2 3's in is 1 3 out. So this becomes minus 5 root 3 over 6. And we're done. And that's option B on the multiple choice. All right. So now for number 23, 7 minus root 6 over 7 plus root 6. Okay, now this one's harder because why? The pluses. We not only have a root on the bottom, but we have plus or minuses. So when you have a root and plus or minus in the denom, what do? You multiply top and bottom by what's called the conjugate, which is same. The conjugate is the same as the denominator, opposite sign in the middle. So multiply by 7 minus root 6. So I'm grabbing the denominator, and I'm multiplying by the exact same thing, but opposite sign in the middle. It's just a coincidence that that happens to be what's in the top. It's not because that's what's in the top. It's because I'm taking the bottom and multiplying by the opposite sign. Okay, so then what happens? Well, you got to FOIL it. In other words, it's like parentheses on these guys. So you got to take the 7 to both. 7 times 7, 49, minus 7 root 6. He's done. That 7 went to both. And now this root 6, whoops, kind of messing up there, is going to go to both. And so we get minus 7 root 6 minus, and what's root 6 times root 6? That's going to be plus, right? Because 2 negative times negative is positive. Root 6, plane 6. Remember, 2 roots. It's a 2 for 1 deal. What happens on the bottom? On the bottom, same thing. 7 goes to both. That's 49 minus 7 root 6, and then he goes to both. Plus 7 root 6. Minus, right, plus times minus, this guy times this guy is negative, positive times negative is negative, root 6, plane 6, right, two sixes in roots, 2 in, 1 out. These cancel, notice. Beautiful. That's why we use the opposite sign. Do you see that? To get those to drop out, because we want to get rid of the roots. So what do we have now? 49. Actually, this 49 and this 6 can add together to be, what's that, 50, 55? So 49 plus 6 made that 55. This 49 and that 6 add together to be 55. Minus 7 root 6 and 7 root 6 is 14 root 6. All over 49 minus 6. And that is 55 minus 14 root 6 all over 43. That looks like it's option B on the multiple choice. There it is. 24. Six x cubed equals negative 120x plus 54x squared. Okay, so we need to have a game plan for these kind of problems. So how do we solve these kind of problems? So for x squared or x cubed, number one, get a 0 on one side factor, like with the parentheses, or use the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, all right, let's grab this guy and jump him to the other side, and grab this guy and also jump him to the other side. What happens when things jump to the other side of the equal sign? They change signs. So we get 6x cubed minus 54x squared. See that plus 54x squared becomes minus, and then the minus 120x will become plus 120x. When they jump to the other side, their signs change. Okay, now how do we factor that? So the first step, so we're on the factoring step now, is to look at 6, 54, and 120, and notice that 6 goes into all of them. So I got to take out a 6 and an x, right? They all have an x. So I'm taking out, that's the GCF, I'm taking out what's in common. What does that leave on the inside? There's going to be three things. 6x times x squared, 6x times minus 9x, and 6x times 20 will go back. Now, keep factoring. Now we do the two parentheses. X is in the front because, x times x will be x squared. And what two numbers multiply to be 20? 5 and 4. And they add to be minus 9. How do they add? Remember, the sign in the middle goes on the bigger, and the other one can be plus or minus. What does it need to be to make the middle work? Minus also. Right? You got to have minus 5 and minus 4. They add to be minus 9, and two negatives multiply to be positive 20. So it's right. So we factored. We didn't have to use the quadratic formula on this one. We factored. And now we set each part equal to 0, right? Because if a bunch of things are multiplying to equal 0, any of them could be 0, like 6x times x minus 5 times x minus 4 is equaling 0. They're multiplying to equal 0. So the first one could equal 0, or the second one could equal 0, or the third one could equal 0. Any of them could equal 0. So how do we finish solving that first one? Divide by 6. 0 over 6 is just 0. This one, jump the 5 over, becomes a positive 5. This one, jump the 4 over, becomes a positive 4. So the answers are 0, 5, and 4. 3 answers on that problem. So that was a pretty hard one. All right, 25. A half x minus 4 equals a fourth x plus 2. Okay, so we're supposed to solve this thing. What do we do when we have fractions? How do we always handle fractions? We multiply through by the common denominator. So we got a 2 here and a 4 there. So let's multiply through by 4. That's the common denominator. Cancels here. Cancels here. 2 goes into 4 2 times. So we get 2x minus 4 times 4, 16, is 1x plus 2 times 4, 8. Okay. Now we're trying to solve for x. How do we get x alone? Well, you'd subtract the lower one. Subtract 1x from both sides. And we get 1x minus 16 is 8. How do we finish getting x alone here? Add 16. And 1x, that's just x, is 24. There we go. We solved for x. All right, to number 26. Number 26 is x plus 3 squared equals 15. Okay. So how do we solve that? What do we do? So when you solve when you have like a parenthesis squared, you put a root and plus or minus root over the sides. So I'm going to go root, and you got to go plus or minus on that side. Rooting cancels squaring, so you get x plus 3 is plus or minus the square root of 15. Now you just need to get x alone, so just jump the 3 right to there. Remember what happens when things jump to the other side of the equal sign? Becomes a negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 15. That's a fine answer, or you could say negative 3 plus root 15, comma negative 3 minus root 15. Either one of those is a fine answer on the test. I don't care. Either one is good. All right, 27. 1 plus 1 over x is 42 over x squared. Okay, so how do we solve this? Again, we have denominators, don't we? We have x squared and x. What do you always do when you've got fractions, when you've got denominators? You multiply through by the common denominator, which is the biggest power. So that's going to be x squared. Same thing here. X squared is over 1, right? And x squared over 1. So we're multiplying through by x squared over 1. See what happens. This just becomes x squared. This x cancels one of those and just leaves one extra x. These x squareds cancel completely and just leave 42. Okay, so now we need to solve what's left. How do we solve what's left? Well, again, when you have x squared and x to the first with an equal sign, step 1 is to get a 0. So that's my first step. Take this 42 and just jump it to the other side. Becomes a minus 42, right? When things jump over the equal sign, they change signs. Step 2, you can try to factor with the parentheses, or you can use the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'll try to factor, 2 parentheses, x is in the front. Okay, what last times last to multiply and be 42? 6 times 7. But what signs? Remember, they have to add to be the middle. There's a plus 1. The sign in the middle goes on the bigger. The 7's bigger. Plus 7, then the 6 can go plus or minus. Either way, the bigger number has to take the sign in the middle. But the smaller number can be plus or minus depending on what's needed to make the middle. To make plus 1 in the middle, you need minus 6, right? Plus 7 minus 6 makes plus 1 in the middle. That works. And then, so what do? You set each part equal to 0. Why? Because two things are multiplying. This and this are multiplying to equal 0. So the first one could be 0, or the second one can be 0. Either way. Jump this over, x is 6. Jump this over, negative 7. 6 and negative 7. Those are our two answers. Again, these ones are not multiple choice. On the real exam, they won't be multiple choice. They'll just be, just leave your answer, your two answers. There it is, number 28. So 3 minus x over x equals 2 over x minus 5 over 6. Okay. So, same thing, denominators, fractions. What do we always do? We multiply through by the LCD, the least common denominator, which is you use all the denominators. So 6x over 1, 6x over 1, 6x over 1, right? You multiply through, then you cancel. X cancels x, so we're left with 6. 3 minus x minus x cancels x. 6 times 2 just going to be 12. Whoop, not minus, that's an equals there, isn't it? I'm getting confused. That's an equals. 6 times 2, 12, minus, and these 6's cancel, 5x. So this 6 distributes here, 18 minus 6x is 12 minus 5x. Okay, got rid of the fractions, right? So now x is saying I want to be alone, so you add the lower one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to add the 6x. The negative 6x is actually lower than negative 5x, so I'll just add him. Either one, though. It'll work either way. 18 equals 12 plus x, right? Because 6 minus 5 is plus 1x. Last step to get x alone, subtract 12, and x is 6. So there's the answer to that one. X is 6. So we got it.